here and joining us today. We're excited to get to spend this hour celebrating inspiration with you all. And I'm Teresa Barnett, and together with the entire Community Resources for Science Board of Directors and team, I want to thank you all for joining us today. I'm going to give you a quick program note that we are going to be recording the program because we do have a few people who are not able to be with us today, so they will be able to view the program later. Settle in, get comfortable. Thank you for being here with us today. I'd like to ask, what inspires you? What makes you wonder and ignites your curiosity to learn more? Where do you feel a sense of belonging? Today, we're taking this hour to celebrate and to honor and reflect on these questions together. I hope you're comfortable wherever you're joining us from. Hopefully you have a nice beverage, a nice snack, something to maybe toast with. We look forward to when we can be together again for these events in person. Science is speeding us toward that day sooner than we might have even thought possible. We've all seen that scientists and researchers here in the Bay Area have played leading roles in solving the health challenges of this pandemic. And children sitting in elementary classrooms today will be helping to solve similarly daunting challenges in the future. They must be prepared to meet their moment when it arrives. And that's what we are all engaged in doing together. How are you connected to CRS? We have educators here and scientists, partners from our science centers, museums, environmental education organizations, donors and funders, and members of our advisory council, and of course, our board of directors and our CRS team. Together, our network is a powerful engine driving a transformation and opportunities for children to explore and discover about their world. We're working together to inspire children to find their own special place, their own future place in the world, one opportunity at a time. Together, we're celebrating the milestone of providing 200,000 inspiration opportunities. That's a lot. You've helped make it possible for our amazing outreach programs, BASIS and Be a Scientist, to engage 200,000 children in direct, authentic STEM learning with actual scientists and engineers. These role models and mentors help children make connections between the things that kids are interested in, whether it's pets or skateboards or sports or music, to possible career pathways into STEM fields they might not have otherwise even imagined. You've helped them discover ways that they themselves, even as kindergartners or fourth graders, can take actions to make their community healthier, cleaner, and more vibrant. You've shown them ways they can contribute to science through bio-blitzes, counting bugs or plants in local parks, and other citizen science experiences. Throughout our program this evening, you'll hear from our team, Tyler and Corinne and Adriana, as they introduce some of our scientists and educator honorees. And before we delve into that program, I want to take just a moment to do a special shout out to that team. Adriana just joined us in February, and she was immersed immediately in helping us prepare for this event. You'll see her handiwork throughout this program. She interviewed our scientists and educator honorees and has spent countless hours putting together videos that we've been sharing on our website and in social media, and that you'll see in our program today. And Tyler has been absolutely heroic during this pandemic. I don't know how many of you know about our BASIS program, our outreach program, and how intimately you're involved with it, but Tyler has immediately helped our scientists pivot from their in-person program to being able to continue to deliver their exciting lessons for students and teachers learning at home on Zoom. And this year, they reached over 750 classrooms. It's amazing. Tyler, I think, is one of the leading experts in the nation now on how to get scientists comfortable presenting to elementary kids in their classrooms and doing great virtual engaging presentations. And to Corinne, she has handled the logistics of all those placements and helped all the teachers whose carefully planned lessons were suddenly just thrown up in the air when school doors closed to figure out how to continue teaching science and do it well, and how to understand what resources our partner organizations had available. So I know that all of you have some connection to Corinne or to Tyler, and you'll get to know Adriana, and you share in my thanks and congratulations to them for their heroic work. So now on with our program. Throughout the program, you're going to hear snippets of interviews from our scientists and educator honorees. We picked a few out of the hundreds and thousands of teachers and scientists we work with that just have really inspired us this year. And you'll be hearing a little bit about their thoughts and their ideas, and we'll be introducing them as we go through the program. You can see more about them and their amazing stories and their insights in the spotlights we've posted on our website. They inspire us, and we think they will inspire you too. I'm excited to share this joy and to celebrate with you today. And to kick us off, I'm really excited on the theme of inspiration. I'm delighted to introduce our first speaker, Professor Kosa Goucher-Lambert. Professor Lambert, sorry, my screen got blocked. Professor Goucher-Lambert has done some amazing research on the subject of inspiration in the science of inspiration. And as we were planning this event, we were looking around to see if we could find anything on that topic. And we were so delighted to discover some of the really exciting and impressive work that he's done. And then we were even happier to discover that he's right here at UC Berkeley. He's an assistant professor of mechanical engineering and an affiliate faculty at the Jacobs Institute of Design Innovation and the Berkeley Institute of Design. He's an expert in the field of engineering design theory, methods, and automation, and conducts research merging computational analyses of human behavior in design with cognitive and neuroscience models of designer behavior. It's really interesting stuff, and I encourage you to visit his website, learn more about his research, the many awards he's won. We're delighted to have him here to share with us today as we celebrate and reflect on inspiration. So please take it away.
All right, thank you, Teresa, for that introduction, and really exciting to be here. Let me share my screen. Okay. All right, thanks. Yeah, so this is a lot of fun for me, and I guess a slightly unusual venue to chat about some of the work that we've done at UC Berkeley. So once again, I'm Kosa Goucher-Lambert. I'm an assistant professor of mechanical engineering at UC Berkeley. And so I just wanted to share some quick stuff about me and my research lab. So my research group is called the Co-Design Lab. So that's Cognition and Computation and Design. We're affiliated with Mechanical Engineering Department. And if you're familiar with Berkeley, there's also the Jacobs Institute for Design Innovation, which is basically a center for all things design. So making and fabrication, lots of teamwork. So this is kind of like a prototypical picture when things are in person of someone in our makerspace plugging away. And so, you know, the research in my lab spans a lot of different areas. So we're looking at computational tools. You can think of things in VR. We study human designers and their processes. And so broadly speaking, we're interested and we study how humans and computers design. And we develop new methods and tools that we at least think help both of them, that is both being humans and computers, do this better. All right, so I'm going to go on a tangent and kind of share how we got into this whole idea of inspiration. So does anybody know what this is? You can either, why don't you put wrong answers in the chat, and I'll show you what it is in just a second. So what you're looking at here is a close-up of Velcro. And I love this example of Velcro and the inspiration for Velcro. So the Velcro was inspired by these cocklebur plants that you might have seen being stuck to your leg if you walked through a field. And these types of what I would call inspiration are all over in engineering and design, and there's just too many to count. So I have a couple that I like here, such as this origami solar array that was used to fold up a solar array and go out into outer space with NASA. Something from a couple others from colleagues at Berkeley. So a cockroach-inspired robotic device from my colleague Li Wei Lin in mechanical engineering, and then lots of great examples in materials design. So this is from a conch shell, and this is Professor Grace Gu, also at mechanical engineering at Berkeley. And so all of these sources of inspiration were driven by analogies or analogical reasoning. And so this is the process by which we take information from what we call a source and apply it in a new way to a target. And in my field, which is design research, we study this all the time because several studies have shown how these analogies can help designers to come up with additional ideas and also ideas that have really desirable properties, such as they're more novel and more creative. And so what we ask is, how can we make this power of design via inspiration available on demand to all designers all the time for any problem? It's a really tough ask. I'll share some quick snippets, but the high level is we study human behavior all the way down to human cognition with some work involving neuroimaging, and we leverage the power of people at scale and lots of computational techniques. All right, so our first step in trying to solve this grand challenge that I posed was turning to the crowd, and so that you can think of yourself as the crowd to find inspiration. And so basically we a lot of static. Yeah, so basically we had this observation, of course, that obtaining something that's what we call relevant sources of inspiration is so challenging, right? For any problem, this is something that's difficult to do in research and in practice. So we have this 4-step process here where we first identified some common design problems from our community, our literature. We crowdsource a super high volume of solutions to these problems from domain experts and non-experts. We use mathematical techniques to extract what we thought would be inspirational sources given these solutions. And then we tested to see if we were right in what we thought would be inspirational sources using some experiments with humans. All right, so I'm not going to go through these, but we essentially identified 12 common engineering design problems from the literature. And these are all over the place. So things like designing a device that can collect energy from human motion, down to coming up with ideas for a measuring cup for the blind. So we took these different problems, we put them online on Amazon Mechanical Turk, which is a crowdsourcing platform. We had hundreds of people solve each of these problems. And we asked them to describe their ideas in writing, what they thought of, and specific keywords associated with them. Now, using a variety of computational techniques, we essentially took these solutions that we had gathered at scale, and we've extracted different sources of inspiration from these that we thought might be helpful. And so we classified these into different bins, and you can think of the near, medium, and far being like common inspirational sources, somewhat common, and pretty uncommon ideas or sources of inspiration. Then we took these sources of inspiration and we actually gave them to students in a design class. So this is a capstone engineering design class. So these are like junior, senior mechanical engineering students. And we asked them to solve different problems prompted with these ideas. And then we have experts evaluate the concepts that the students are generating. So these ideas are evaluated based on their novelty and their feasibility, usefulness, and their overall quality. And so what did we find? We found that these stimuli, these inspirational stimuli, have a positive impact on design ideas. And some high-level takeaways are that common sources of inspiration generally improve the usefulness and feasibility of these design concepts. And less common or distant stimuli improve the novelty or creativity of the concepts. Okay, and we wanted to take this one step further, which is through a roundabout way, I was talking with a colleague of mine who's in psychology, and we decided, wouldn't it be cool if we were looking at the brains, of designers while they're generating these ideas with inspiration. So we decided to do this. We put people in these fMRI or MRI machines like pictured here. So if you've been in one, long tube, loud magnet, and we had people solve these different design problems. So they're in there for an hour solving these different problems where we're giving them the same crowdsourced sources of inspiration. And we're looking at the brain activity while people are solving these design problems. And so what we find here is that these active brain regions help us to uncover why inspirational stimuli actually help designers. And so we have two pathways that we established. And the more interesting one, which I'll highlight here, is something that we termed inspired internal search. And that these examples are helpful because they direct our attention to our memory, and they prompt what we call having moments of insight. So inspiration is only meaningful when they help us to trigger something from our own lived experiences. And these lived experiences, these internal sources of memory, provide us with these aha moments, these moments of insight to solve problems. And so we've taken some of these results and we've transitioned them out of a research context and into actually more of an education one. So another thing that I'm involved in is the designexchange.org. So this is an open source repository of design methods and case studies that we use to teach design to both professionals and to students all over the world. And one of our methods, for example, is a method called forced analogy. So I'll drop a link in the chat and encourage you to check it out. But this is one technique that we have leveraged to prompt engineers and designers to think more creatively, to come up with new sources of inspiration to problems that they're working on. So I'll stop there. That's just a high-level snippet into the world of inspiration and design. Happy to take any questions if there's time in the chat, or if you want to follow up with me offline, would encourage any conversations about inspiration, about design, about project-based learning, or engineering. So thanks so much for having me, and what an awesome accomplishment with 200,000 students reached. Thanks.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's really amazing, and we love to think about what those touchstones will create, those aha moments for the students that we're serving. So thank you so much. And it's really exciting research. I do encourage you to check out the links. I think Tyler has something queued up that is going to affect us.
I love inspiring anybody. Adult to 4 or 5 years old. I love teaching kids because they're a lot smarter than people give them credit for. If you can put it in terms that they can relate to, it's lovely to see these aha moments.
This wonderful thank you note from a 9-year-old named Riley, who wrote to them that he was very impressed and had a lot of fun with one particular activity in the lesson. And he loved it so much that he told his parents about it, and told his parents that 2 viruses can combine and make a new one. And they were surprised, according to Riley. And that thank you note was so meaningful to me. He educated his family. And when you have that effect on a child, you have an effect on a family. And when you can change the way a family thinks, you can change communities. And that's how you can ultimately change societies.
Want as many people who are interested in being scientists to feel like that's a possibility for them. But in addition to that, I think even people who won't end up going into academia or being actual scientists, I think to give them a passion for science and realize that nature is cool and that science is a useful, interesting thing is just really good for society and really good for those people.
Hope to inspire my students to see themselves as change makers in the world, not just as mathematicians, but as scientists. I think it's important to empower the students. A lot of times they think like, oh, I'm only 10, what can I do? Kids do make a difference, and they can make a difference.
the moment that kids see themselves as people who can ask questions and think creatively is just immensely important. What the perception has been of who can be a scientist, I think it's particularly important to show students who haven't always had that representation that they are also awesome scientists.
I always am a big believer in leading by example and making yourself visible and transparent. Nurturing is important. For me to appreciate science, I appreciate it by meeting people that can be frank with their journey and tell us what stumbling blocks or things they learned about it. I think those are important things that we need to give our youth.
The best part of being a PhD student is getting to answer questions that don't have answers yet. You can always find out something more. It's not what some people have told us that science is, that you have to go find a book because maybe somebody already knows that. A lot of what I do now is answering a question that there's not an answer written down. I get to find out what the answer is, and then I get to share it with people.
I love being outside, seeing the life cycle of a poppy. Those flowers are there for a day and then they're gone. And I love to help people notice things that are happening. That's what's kind of inspiring to me, is I just see some things, when I'm outside looking around, and I want other people to notice them too.
Anytime I can get the kids out of the classroom, I feel like magic happens. Give them a lot of opportunity just to be in nature and not a lot of structure. Field trips in general, we take the kids to an all-day trip to the tide pools, and some kids have never been to a beach before, let alone tide pools. And I'm watching kids touch sea anemones for the very first time. As much as I enjoy teaching in the classroom, for me, that's just the stepping stone to get them outside.
I have 2 slideshows that I present, and later on I ask the class, what are the body parts of our immune system? And when they shout out like thymus or bone marrow, it's like, yes, it's just so fun.
The excitement that you get when you learn about new stuff and then you think about how you can use that new knowledge. I want to try and spark that. They're not really going to remember like the specifics of what I taught them, but I think they will remember that for how exciting and how fun it was to really think through this and get to the point where they could actually take it from a cool thought to turning it into something that they're like, I did this and I here's what I got.
All right. Well, just getting this all squared away. Thank you, Professor Goucher-Lambert, for sharing, and so great to hear from so many of our honorees tonight talking about inspiration. Inspiration is such an important and driving force for all of us, regardless of what we do, but it's an especially important and driving force for our young students, those that a lot of you are playing such important roles in reaching and inspiring. So hearing about inspiration is truly what it's all about. So thank you. I'm Tyler Chuck, our Senior Manager of Engagement and Outreach at Community Resources for Science. And as we can all probably say, this year has been difficult for us in so many different ways. But I have to say the highlight of my year, for sure, has been the incredible work of our scientists stepping up to the plate to meet the needs of our community. You've gone above and beyond, so thank you. We have honorees that I'd like to introduce tonight. So first of all, we're inspired by scientists who engage their community, like Deb Thompson, a veterinarian in the One Health community that connects human doctors, veterinarians, and environmental scientists to work together. She's launched onehealthlessons.com, and she's enabled her community to teach, connecting scientists from all over the world, from countries like Kenya, China, Nigeria, and other states in the US to classrooms. We're inspired by scientists who bring enthusiasm and joy to sharing in the classroom and want to give back in their retirement, like Carol Miranda, a former scientist at Bayer. This year, Carol has taught over 35 lessons to rave reviews and lots of lovely stories, of which I'm excited for you to hear about. We're inspired by scientists who focus on creating a sense of belonging in STEM, like Angel Rodriguez, who organizes lessons for the Latino Association for graduate students in engineering and sciences. It's so inspiring for a student to see a science role model that looks like them. Angel is also a fantastic father and a member of our military. So Angel, thank you so much for your service. We're inspired by scientists who are in STEM industry and make time for outreach to give back to their communities, like Anna D'Alessio, the Director of Quality of Engineering at the Evaldi Group. She was a BASIS volunteer when she was a graduate student at UC Berkeley, and we're so inspired that she's continued her outreach. This year, she's taught lessons both in the Science Ambassador and the Storytime Science programs. We're inspired by scientists who aim to be role models for students of color, showing them that they have a place in STEM, like Lorenzo Washington, who is a graduate student in plant and microbial biology. In addition to being an engaging and thoughtful speaker, as you've seen in some of these recorded remarks already, he's led a BASIS team and also been a Be a Scientist role model. His students absolutely are inspired by him. We're also inspired by scientists who work together in teams of graduate students, like Tanner Frank, Jamin Lee, and Joshua Zimt from the Museum of Vertebrate Zoology. They've created 3 new lessons this year to inspire students to think critically about paleontology and get excited about what they can possibly learn from our Earth. They've become one of our very most active BASIS teams this year and been a huge source of inspiration for upper elementary age students. We're inspired by scientists who have a strong sense of social justice, like Julie Self, a graduate student in vision science. In addition to being a team leader for her I See It lesson, Julie has created another lesson called The Science of Bias that helps provide the scientific backing behind why we have biases and stereotypes. It's really fascinating to me. We love how this lesson directly uses science to address some of the important social issues that we're facing today. And finally, we're inspired by scientists who embrace many types of outreach, like recent integrative biology graduate student and steering committee member, Dr. Emily King. Emily has done outreach in so many roles with CRS, advising our steering committee for how to best recruit students on campus, organizing her BASIS team, mentoring students through the Be a Scientist program, and also through the Science Ambassador program. Let's take a moment to give all of our scientist honorees a big round of applause virtually. All right, we're going to hear from them in their own words here. To learn a little bit more about the honorees, though, Adriana has done a fantastic job of putting together each of their spotlights. So you can follow the links in the chat that we've seen to learn a little bit more about any of our science honorees here.
One of the privileges that scientists can have is that they will know something that others don't know for the first time until they publish that work.
I like solving problems. I like finding new problems and new solutions. And so that's really what I'm hoping happens, is that some kids get to see that maybe for the first time.
What I can bring is that curiosity that I had as a kid, and just honoring, just enjoying their observations and their questions that they have, whether it's an experiment or scientific drawing. It always goes back to the science.
My favorite part when I work with the students is hearing the kind of questions they ask and the kind of thinking that they have going on. Being in such an academic space, you're surrounded by all these people that are like supposed to know all this stuff, and we're all supposed to be super smart, blah, blah, blah. But then it's like you're dealing with a 5th grader and they're asking cooler questions than you heard in the seminar. And that's one of the things that I think gives me the most wonder, is just seeing how smart people are in general when they really start thinking about things.
In 1999, I started a program called the Escape Club. We have been taking kids on field trips once a month for 20 years now. What we're calling it now is sort of phenomena-based instruction, right? Where you can share what's going on in the world with kids and have them wonder about, what's happening there. How does that work? How can I explain that? And I think something like that works at any grade level. A kindergartner can appreciate a science phenomena on one level, and maybe a 5th grader can explain it a little better, but we can always appreciate the phenomena and wonder about what's happening.
Kids, they really do have a natural curiosity. We wouldn't be here as a species if we didn't have a sense of wonderment and want to explore. So to me, I feel like I just give them give them the space to do what their bodies and millions of years of evolution have been telling them to do, explore the world, figure it out, learn, take that information, carry it on.
Wonder is really captured in the fossils, that you can pick up something and it can be 450 million years old. Give someone a fossil, oh, it's a fossil. And then you start to ask them how old it was, what do they think it was? And as they learn more about it, the wonder grows, because then you realize it's not a rock, it's actually something that was once alive that now we can look at today, millions, sometimes hundreds of millions of years later. And it can sometimes unlock a whole new world of questions for the students.
The wonderful experiences I've had with CRS, with the 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, I find it a lot of fun to become a 5th grader and look at life from their eyes, or at least, you know, my concept of what a 5th grader is at my age. So I reach back in my own life and try to remember, okay, well, what did I not know? What did I know? How can I provide them the path forward?
And no matter what we are doing, we can do 3 things. I notice, I wonder, and it reminds me of. It might not seem like much, but those things thrill me on a regular basis.
Wonder. That's what it's all about. I love hearing those thoughts, teachers, the thoughts of our scientists. They're so powerful. And that's what activates curiosity. It's the key. What do you wonder? We love hearing how scientists and teachers use wonder to engage students and get that as an engine for student learning, and how wonder sparks their own work too. We're happy to have an expert on this very subject, Professor Joseph Krajik. He's from the Create for STEM Institute at Michigan State University. And as we were preparing this event, we were trying to find someone who might have done some research about wonder, and we were so excited to come across his research and his work at the Create for STEM Institute. And he draws his research from both the College of Natural Science and the College of Education. And it's focused on strengthening STEM education from kindergarten all the way through college, and particularly focused on helping teachers adapt and adopt practices that promote student active learning, project-based learning, in learning that is really rooted in engagement and wondering about things before students take the next steps to learn and figure out. Professor Krajik is a member of the National Academy of Education, and his goal is to explore and advance the knowledge on creating engaging learning environments for all learners. So we felt it was just like CRS, a perfect fit. Because of the time difference in Michigan, we asked him to record his brief remarks, so he's given us a lovely 5-minute view into his really interesting research around the importance of wonder and activating that for the power of student learning. So we're going to share that his recording with you now. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joe Krajik, a professor of science education and the director for the Create for STEM Institute at Michigan State University. And today, we're going to explore and examine seeing the wonder in our world. Look at some of these wonderful images of our own world. Bees returning to their nest, mushrooms growing on logs, a beautiful outcropping in southwestern United States. What do all these images have in common? How is the outcropping of these beautiful rocks related to these crystals of menthol, to mushrooms growing on a log, to bees returning to their hives at night, to sodium catching on fire, and a cell phone? What do all these images have in common? They're all phenomena. Most of them, except for the cell phone, are natural occurring phenomena. And by that I mean events that happen in our world that are repeatable and that we can examine and explore. Now, the cell phone is a human-made phenomena. It's an event, and there are events that we can do them all the time, like send information around the world instantly. How is that possible? What is going on in that little contraption that allows us to do that? All these phenomena, if they're natural occurring events or if they're human-made, spark wondering, what is going on? What happened? How did this possibly happen? They drive us asking questions and to figure out. So why experience phenomena and ask questions? Phenomena create a sense of wonderment and curiosity about the world in which they live. And they drive our learning and our investigations. And one of the reasons why that happens is because it allows us to make connections to our own world and our own background. And there's implications beyond just the realm of school. We're learning about phenomena, we're exploring phenomena because it's our world. Let's look at a couple of examples. Here are some crystals of menthol. I'm a chemist by training, and the structure of crystals have always fascinated me. And all menthol crystals always have exactly the same shape. They're kind of this long, elongated look. And if I opened up a jar of menthol, soon the spread of menthol would go throughout the entire room. How is that possible? How come I can smell odors from such a great distance? And I wish it was only pleasant smells like menthol or the baking of chocolate chip cookies, but oftentimes it can also be things that don't smell so well, like garbage on a hot summer day. Phenomena also promote us asking questions and exploring our world. Fresh water, as shown in these two streams, is a very rare and sacred resource that we have on our Earth, on our planet Earth. And if it's ever destroyed, it's gone. So we constantly have to say, how healthy is our stream for freshwater organisms? Not only fish and various insects, but also for us. And unfortunately, at times, through our own actions, we make the streams not very livable for them, for organisms, as we can see in this bottom photo of the foam being formed. So how do our actions as humans on land impact the stream and the organisms that live there? Over the last several years, I've become very interested in bees, and we now have 5 beehives in our backyard. How do all those bees, and there are thousands of them, how do they know to return to their hive and not to the hive right next to them? What is it that triggers bees to return home with their pollen so they can make this beautiful, delicious honey? Many of us love to put table salt on our food. A little bit really enhances the taste of food. And I certainly can eat sodium chloride, table salt. But why is it that I can't eat sodium? Sodium, when placed in water, is extremely explosive, as you see in the bottom picture here. So I couldn't even put a tiny piece of sodium on my tongue without suffering a severe burn. But often table salt tastes good to us on some food. So here's my challenge for you. Today, I want you to take a walk and look at all the many natural or human-made phenomena that are happening all around you. So for instance, the rainbow at the top. In fact, that's a very special rainbow that we saw when we were out west one year, because it's a double rainbow. Double rainbows are really hard to find. How do they happen? And why is it every year, every spring, vegetables pop up? We have to plant seeds every year, but then they pop up and they grow into very tasty, different kind of vegetables. How is it that a seed grows into being a particular kind of a fruit? Those are all questions. So today I want you to look around, notice some natural occurring events, or they could be human events, human-made events, like bridges. How do bridges withhold so many many vehicles driving across them? And I want you to ask questions about them. So take some time today and wonder about the world in which you live in, because it's that wondering that drives us making sense of the world. It's that wondering that drives what science is all about. It's the first step in becoming a good scientist, is always focusing and thinking about the world and asking, what's going on here? I want to thank you. And if you have questions and comments, please contact me at my email or send me a little message on Twitter. Thank you. And remember, look at the world around you and always say, what's going on here? What questions do you have about this? There's a lot of beautiful things out there if we just open our eyes and look at them. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Krajik, for reminding us to look for the wonder and ponder the phenomena of the world around us. Hello, I'm Corinne Brown, Teacher Services Manager at CRS. Teaching elementary science has always been a challenge. That's why CRS exists, to help teachers strengthen their skills and confidence, and to make it easier for teachers to find lessons, materials, resources, and of course, scientists and museum experts who can bring science phenomena to life. During this pandemic, the distance learning, the disparities in access for students in historically marginalized communities has been in the spotlight. The teachers working with these students have inspired us throughout the year with their enthusiasm and dedication, their experimentation with new ways to teach science and get families involved from home, and with their ability to lead meaningful lessons with little of the traditional lab equipment and materials they're used to having available. Today, we are spotlighting a few of the amazing educators we are honored to work with. Each one exemplifies excellence and joy in science teaching and learning and represents the efforts of many of their peers. We're dropping links to the spotlights for the educators in the chat in case you want to learn more about them. We are inspired by teachers who give their all year after year, never content to just hit repeat and do the same thing from one year to another. Ann Park has been a science lead teacher in Oakland for many years and a science superstar for 9 years, and is always adding new things for students to do. We're inspired by teachers who continue to actively seek ways to keep upping their game. Elizabeth Cook is an Oakland teacher who has attended the majority of the workshops in our climate literacy professional development series this year. She has spent her afternoons and Saturday mornings with us learning more. She's also been one of our Science Superstars teachers for the last 7 years. We're inspired by teachers like Suzanne Ingley, who teach science all day to multiple grade levels as an elementary science specialist in Berkeley. This year, she's been a power user of our virtual basis programs to keep students engaged in science. We're inspired by teachers who work to connect students with real life science experiences. Jay Cohen is a middle school teacher in Berkeley who embraced our Be a Scientist program when we first started it and invites scientists into his 7th grade classrooms to provide authentic STEM experiences for his students. We're inspired by educators who work to strengthen teaching in their districts. John Iwawaki has shown great leadership in the West Contra Costa schools, making sure that elementary school teachers are learning more about teaching science throughout the district. We appreciate our honorees taking time to reflect on why teaching science is so important to them.
That science is prioritized. It's something that you can integrate with all the subject areas, easily with math, reading, language arts, social studies.
When we do the scientific sketching, the kids are becoming much more observant in everything in their lives, observing the natural world and having this sense of wonder. It has stirred something in me. I have begun doing some sketching. I want to learn more about plants.
I hope that people learn that you don't always have all of the answers, and there are tons and tons of questions to ask along the way. And that's really what science is coming up with a hypothesis and then doing an experiment to test it and see whether or not you're right. That's normal, and that's, it's a lot of fun.
So as a member of an underrepresented community, I feel that we already kind of start off at a pretty bad spot in terms of opportunities or exposure to things out there in the field, in the STEM fields. And I think the sooner we start nurturing that talent and that curiosity at a very young age, I think it'll grow to really become very fruitful when these students are in higher education.
The goal that I have for my future career post PhD is really a similar goal to what I hope to do as a member of a basis team. And that's really just help people understand that they can be a scientist. They don't have to look a certain way. They don't have to have a specific background. everyone can learn science. And if that's what you want to do, like, there are people who will help you do that. I want to just kind of be that coach for people that, like, if you want to do it, like, here, let's talk about how to get there. I love pointing people towards the thing that they're most excited about.
I try to have them learn from doing as much as possible. And even if it gets a little messy, I'm okay with a little messy. I think of it as like getting on a bike. So I even tell that kids, that's okay. You got your knees skinned up a little bit. We learned from this experience. So making failure kind of part of it and making it a learning experience.
I really want teachers to be a part of the process in making students into scientists. I would love for all of our teachers in our district, regardless of how much we know about science, how much we know about science, to wonder with kids, and learn those skills that scientists have, collecting evidence or collecting data, analyzing data, even asking questions.
The ultimate success of going into a classroom would be if a student leaves with some new fact in their mind or some new question that they can go and share to all of their family and friends and be like, I learned about this today and that was awesome.
To inspire every child and adult on this planet to value the interconnection between our health and the health of the environment, animals, and plants. In addition, it's to inspire more action, more collaborative action between people of various abilities, various strengths, various disciplines, so that we can finally prevent and solve complicated problems together.
I'm really interested in reaching out to younger children. I grew up in a rural community, and also just the sciences in general. There are not a lot of people of color, especially Black people. I hope that I can be one of those faces for these younger students and show them that you can be in this space and you can be yourself in this space. And the sciences are really cool. You don't have to be like a crotchety old white person in a lab coat, even though they're also cool in their own way. But it's not just that in the sciences.
If we want our students to be change makers and to be able to solve these world's problems, we have to give them the opportunity early on, so we can spark their curiosity and they'll want to continue that later on. So I think it's our responsibility to ensure that students can participate in these kinds of things.
Great. Tonight we also want to honor a group of 29 teachers who successfully completed our 10th annual Science Superstar Challenge. This challenge both helps teachers see what good science teaching looks like and asks teachers to reflect on how their efforts to strengthen their science teaching impacts their students. Each year, we raise the bar, and every year we are so inspired by the teachers who complete the challenge. They show that teaching science can be done well by documenting their lessons and how they engage their students in scientific practices, but more than that, by taking the time to reflect and share their strategies and tips for success, they help CRS continue to improve the professional development support and other supports we offer to all of the 2,000 teachers we serve every year. This year especially, we are really proud of these 29 teachers who did the challenge even during a pandemic and teaching from home and all many different types of places. In Oakland Unified School District, our honorees are Ann Park, Jessica Jung, Elizabeth Cook, Melissa Frost, Gloria Garcia, and Tracy Dordell. In Berkeley Unified, we have Shireen Filligam-Selk and Robin Harley. In Fremont Unified School District, we have Connie Bayon. In West Contra Costa Unified School District, we have Jerry Bedwell, Janet Belanoff, Lorraine Gray, Pamela Seuss, Tanya Garcia Pena, Sarah von Schock, Rachel Grotke, Stephanie Wagner, Maria Catani, Kim Dower Sargentini, Emily Earle, Jennifer Haig, Bonnie Janora, Madison Crocker, Abby Schultz, Ete Echi, Jocelyn Rohan, Suzanne Hernandez, Victoria Rote, and Lisa Weaver. Please give a round of applause for all of our educator honorees. We also have a special congratulations to share.
Hi, I'm Steve Kerr of the Golden State Warriors, and I want to say congratulations. You did it. Have a great and safe summer and continue to build on all of your accomplishments.
Hey, I'm Stephen Curry of the Golden State Warriors. Congratulations. I know this was a challenging year with the pandemic and many of you having to spend your year in distance learning. but you've persevered and exemplified what it means to be resilient in the face of adversity. On behalf of the Warriors organization, we just want to let you know how proud we are of all of you and all of your accomplishments, and wish you the best of luck on the next part of your journey. Go Dubs.
Hi, I'm Adriana Threlkeld, Communications Manager for CRS. Even as we celebrate the vast range of experiences, talents, and stories of the scientists and teachers who make up the CRS network, we know there is still so much to do. The journey into STEM literacy begins by creating a sense of belonging. Role models from all backgrounds, especially Black and Latinx communities, working together is powerful in helping children recognize that there is a place for them in STEM. Representation alone, however, is not nearly enough. True inclusion requires collective action towards a more equitable future. And as we'll hear from our next speaker, there are critical actionable steps we'll have to take in the coming decade. We're delighted to have Melisa Medrano, an expert in diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, supporting graduates transitioning from academia to industry. Her expertise stems from her own personal experience with this transition. After she received her PhD from Tufts Molecular Microbiology program, studying the regulation of the Lyme disease spirochete, she joined Gilead Sciences to help them nearly triple their employees globally. In August of 2019, she joined NGM Bio, and earlier this year, she became involved with CRS, leading a team of colleagues into the classroom to teach about vaccines. We'll drop into the chat some links to some of the studies Melisa will share with you, along with her contact info if you'd like to contact her with questions.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to try to figure out how to share my screen. So thank you so much. And Adriana has been immeasurably helpful this week in, helping me figure out kind of what would be the best sort of presentation for the audience. As she mentioned, I have a PhD and I've been a scientific recruiter in industry for longer than I care to mention. No, 14 years, and I can't figure out how to advance my screen. Okay, great. And so what I wanted to talk to you all tonight about, and what I've been so inspired tonight in listening to, is inclusion and sort of how that impacts inspiration as well as STEM. And so basically, the way I thought about this was, I think that there's so much that goes into a child's ability to even envision a career path. And when I was a kid, I knew I wanted to go into science, but I had no idea what that meant. I was like, okay, either that means I'm going to be a doctor or a therapist, which is the extent of what I knew, or some sort of, person in a dusty lab coat in the back of a library somewhere. And so I really had no idea, because I didn't have anybody within my, family or core group that was a scientist. And so not only did I know I wanted to pursue science, but I had no idea how to go about that. And then eventually I fell into recruiting. And so I feel like what I've been wanting to do since I've been in recruiting is really help people who want to go into science and kind of shepherd them into careers in science. And I think, the other thing that has to happen when you're a child is there has to be an emphasis in your family on education, your family, but also your community, because it does take a village, has to be supportive of education as well as curiosity, and also value curiosity and discussion. I don't know how many of you were raised like I was, where children are meant to be seen and not heard. And so that kind of squashed, sometimes the question asking that I would do. But also it's the psychological safety to be able to ask questions about the world and see people like ourselves in a role, first of all, but also to to ask, quote unquote, stupid questions, or questions that are, the questions that only children can ask, and they're the ones who really, like someone said earlier this evening, ask the best things that you can think of, because they're just not beholden to all of the, anxiety and stuff like that that humans gain as they get older. And so I was thinking about inspiration and diversity and inclusion in STEM. And diversity and inclusion, and particularly inclusion, but you have to have diversity in order to foster that inclusive mindset, is how does that encourage discovery, wonder, and inspiration? And, I think one of the things that we can all agree on is that it enables us to see things from everybody else's perspectives, right? You put yourself in somebody else's shoes. And you also get a chance to ask questions about the world in different ways than you would if you had just asked it, in the way that you would normally think of it. And so, everybody knows, of course, that, or at least I'm assuming, right, it's called The Difference, the book that he wrote, the 2007 Scott Page study that Netflix inspired, where heterogeneous versus homogeneous teams performed better overall in the study. And there have been a bunch of other, and I included, and in my last slide, there's a bunch of links to these different things. And there's been a sort of a summary survey from McKinsey of subsequent studies where basically they looked at banks, they looked at, other financial institutions, they looked at a bunch of other different types of institutions, and really businesses do best with a heterogeneous mix of teams, with a diverse team mindset. And nobody's arguing that. I just think it's funny because you go on the internet and you still see people who do argue that this is not accurate or whatever. And so it's interesting just because they have shown in a number of studies an enhanced focus on an analysis of facts, critical thinking, objectivity, as well as a continuous improvement mindset, right? Effectiveness, efficiency, as well as creativity and innovation. And I always bring it back to this, is like, a lot of people think that science happens on accident, but it's not just accident. It's about, duking it out and arguing through those various perspectives. And so really, diversity and inclusion also is how we're going to create lasting impacts, and how we're going to really influence our next generation of scientists as well as professionals. And really, again, I bring up this scientific discoveries. Somebody brought up Velcro earlier, and that was a recognition of a happy accident, but also there have been disagreements that have resulted in, with these amazing scientific discoveries like the structure of DNA, and, but also all of these things where somebody has to be in a position where they're going to recognize an accidental discovery as an actual discovery and not an artifact of their research. I also think that an inclusive group is a non-group thinking group, and groupthink is not a good thing in terms of moving things forward. And so it might lead to greater accuracy and better decision making, and though it is sort of not causation, it does look like the data are leading to that. That D&I does create these sort of better decision making. I know I'm preaching to the choir, and so I apologize, but it's just one of those things where I can't, speak to my passions without making sure that I make sure that the facts are listed as well. And the other thing is I just don't want to miss out on other people's really interesting impacts with their varied perspectives. So how is this happening in, COVID times? How is this going to continue to happen? we need to continue to have over communication. We need to continue to reach out to people who are not in our close networks or to the introverts in our networks. Because the thing is that we're only going to be more remote from now on because it's becoming a thing and because people have their own lives and stuff like that. And so I think it's just going to be one of those situations where people are going to have to continue to make sure that they're really not miscommunicating, really. And that's the other thing is science and STEM have been at the forefront of this pandemic. And I think we need to encourage continued discussion about science and STEM, the facts versus beliefs. And we also need to avoid hysteria and the spread of potentially harmful information. And that's why we started out with the vaccine lesson with Tyler, is because we were like, this is the time, now is the time to do a vaccine lesson. And we'll do our, we'll create some lessons down the road that have to do with what our company does, like antibody development and things like that. Is right now is the time where the word needs to get out about vaccines. So, and I think you all know this is a long-term strategy. We're investing. I don't have children, I have cats, but I'm investing because I think it's worthwhile to invest in our children by encourage education and critical thinking and college finishing, not just attendance, as well as leadership opportunities for people who are from diverse backgrounds. And I know, like I said, I'm preaching to the choir, but I really want to thank you all for allowing us to participate. We've had such a great time and we will continue to do so. And I feel like these people are experts and wonderful, and thank you.
Thank you, Melisa, for sharing your story and your perspective from working to build diversity and inclusion in STEM. It's been such a fun time to get to know you this year and your team, and you guys reached out during the pandemic and just have jumped in and been doing awesome outreach through our programs. And thank you for taking time to kind of speak from the heart and share both some personal experience, but also some of the real research that grounds the importance of the work that we're all trying to do to make sure that we're not missing out on the creative voices and talents. We can't afford to leave talent on the table. We need everybody involved in STEM. So thank you so much, Melisa, for highlighting that.
For the opportunity.
Thank you. And I know we promised to sort of, keep our program to an hour, and we're doing pretty well. We have about 5 more minutes to go. So I really appreciate everyone who has spent the time with us this evening. And we could, as you have heard from our wonderful speakers and our honorees, we could talk to them all for hours about the importance and the excitement of doing this work. And I want to thank you all, whether you're a teacher, a scientist, a donor, you're here helping us to make this 200,000 milestone that we're celebrating today. It's only possible because of you. I wanted to take just a moment to call out some of our sponsors and supporters who have really helped to make this possible, because we're a nonprofit and we couldn't do it without their support. And I really wanted to acknowledge our Inspiration funding partner. Our funding partner has really been an inspiration for us is Rich Robin and his team at Wareham Development, because they build and manage the research labs and the spaces where a lot of medical and technological work that drives our Bay Area economy is happening. And for them to recognize the importance not only of a well-prepared STEM workforce, but the fact that that pipeline begins all the way at the earliest grade, supporting kindergartners and kindergarten teachers, it's really inspiring to us. We're also grateful to our other corporate and business partners who have provided sponsorship to us and whose employees, like Melisa at NGM Bio, participating in our outreach programs and bringing their enthusiasm to local schools. And some of those longest term partnerships that we've had include Bayer, Clorox, Cliff Bar, and Amherst, but there are many, many others, and you can see them all listed on our website. And finally, I want to thank the public, the university and public partnerships that support and sustain our work. UC Berkeley is where our outreach programs really began and took root and were able to grow, especially from the College and Department of Chemistry. And they blossomed from, a handful of grad students to now more than 600 scientists and engineers from across campus in nearly all STEM departments and disciplines and programs. And we thank all of them for sharing both their cutting edge research, as well as their like silly jokes and their important career pathway stories that really engage and inspire thousands of students. And I also want to acknowledge the Port of Oakland and the Lawrence Berkeley Lab, because they have also been so important to us over the years in terms of both sponsorship, but also getting their employees, whether they're FAA officials from the Oakland Airport, employees who help run the maritime operations at the port, and scientists, physicists from the lab. They've all been giving their time to students. And finally, before I turn the virtual stage over to our CRS Board President, Alan Poon, to close out our evening, I would like to once again just thank all of you for being here and helping us celebrate the planting of those 200,000 seeds of inspiration. We're not exactly sure how they'll blossom, but as we've heard from our speakers, there are those aha moments, those connections, those engagements, engagement in their world that is going to serve those students in their futures. And we can't wait to see how those turn out. Thank you for all of you. Some of you used our registration form and you shared your own thoughts about wonder and inspiration. And we hold those comments that you shared with us dear, and we'll be sharing them out. And for my close, I want to share with you one comment that Pamela Seuss, one of our Science Superstar teachers, shared with us, because I think it really sums up so much why this work matters. And for us, it's the heart of what we do at CRS. And she wrote, "The seeds of interest are planted all along your life journey. If a child finds something interesting in kindergarten, every time they hear something related to that interest, they think, hey, I know about that. They feel so happy that they already know about this thing. Those small connections of interest and happiness propel students toward wanting to know more and more. Wanting to know more is the thing we want to teach." So thank you all for joining us here this evening to celebrate that. And now I'd like to welcome our CRS Board President, physicist Dr. Alan Poon, who is the Deputy Division Director at Lawrence Berkeley Lab. And he's been with CRS, I think, the longest of anybody here. He began way back in the early days as a volunteer. He's served on our advisory council, and now he serves on our board of directors. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Teresa, and good evening. This is such an inspirational event. Well, first of all, I want to introduce our CRS Board's Vice President, who really is the co-president, and that is Dr. Ann Behringer. She's a chemist and Associate Dean for Diversity and Equity and Inclusion at UC Berkeley. So Ann, please turn on your camera if it's not already on yet. Hi, Ann.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here.
Ann and I are very humbled by our fellow board members for entrusting us to lead the board in the past year. And from both of us, and on behalf of the board, we want to thank you all for coming to this celebration. When Teresa asked me last week to give a closing remark, my jaw dropped instantly. As the theme around the CRS office these days is associated with the number 200,000, I can't possibly write a 200,000 word speech in such a short time. And it will be very dry and dull, just like my dissertation. It took me several years to write it, and it's less than 200,000 words for sure. I eventually negotiated down to about 200 seconds. So here we go. Think about the number 200,000 for a moment. I bet we have all struggled at times to reach our 10,000 steps, our daily 10,000 steps, especially during these COVID times. But CRS has inspired over 200,000 students in the past 24 years. This cannot be achieved without support from the staff, volunteers, teachers, and sponsors like you. So here's my own words. To the staff and Teresa, you're truly amazing. How you pivoted to provide online resources in the past year has been truly inspirational. To the volunteers, you instill a sense of wonder in our school children. You're truly inspirational. My sweetest memory from the days I was volunteering in the classroom has been receiving those hand-drawn thank you cards from the students. I'm so happy to see that they don't draw an old man in white lab coat, like the white hairs and like Albert Einstein. You're changing the perception of what a scientist looked like while instilling a sense of wonder. To the teachers, I came across a meme on my LinkedIn page recently that says, engineers make bridges, artists make paintings, scientists make rockets, and you, teachers, you make them all. So thank you, teachers. You're truly inspirational. To our supporters and sponsors, you are making a better community, a better future for us all. Your support does not only enrich the learning of school children, you're helping us scientists and graduate student volunteers better communicators. Imagine that they have to explain the chirality of molecules to third grade students. Never mind, I can never do it. These volunteers are telling the world the importance of science in early childhood education and the decision-making process in corporate and government policies. So my 200 seconds is probably up by now. To conclude, a thank you to you all, and I hope to see CRS reaching another 200,000 students before the end of this decade. We'll continually need your support to meet that challenge. Good night.
Thank you, Alan. And thank you to all of you. Thanks for joining us.
And thank you. A special shout out to Teresa. This year has been really, really difficult for everybody, and everyone at CRS has really done a really good job.
It's an awesome team. Thank you to our honorees. You have earned hopefully an enjoyable summer rest or exploration and wondering and new discoveries.